Welcome for another Budget Committee Ask Me Anything session. This is April 30th, 2025. We take this hour of time, we try to spread these hours of time out throughout the week and throughout the different time zones to take questions from DReps, vendors, community members that they might have on the budget process. And today we've got a few updates. We can kind of let you know where we are. We're now in the reconciliation process. So the many vendors have put forth proposals. There were a couple hundred proposals that were actually put forward through the tooling. DReps have given temperature checks and given feedback on proposals. Changes were made to those proposals over several weeks, and now we've taken a snapshot of where those stood. And at this moment in time, we have about 35 proposals out of that roughly 200 that are over the line, as it were. They have a little over 2.5 billion ADA in the new Ecclesia tool that has voted yes on those proposals, and they're very familiar proposals. You'll see IOG, IOR, you'll see Catalyst, you'll see AdaStat. There's a handful of very well-known names. And there's some money in there to have the summit, things of that nature. So some very common things. There's some stuff missing. Intersect's proposal is currently in the negative. You'll actually see some folks that are talking about that right now. Intersect's proposal, Intersect was asked to be the administrator on all of the 35 proposals that are over the line. So we have to talk about what it's going to take for DReps to fund Intersect so that it can do the administrative job that it needs to do for those 35 proposals, plus any others that happen to get over the line over the next couple of days. I can tell you as of right now, that number is, if everything is funded the way it is right now, and you do include Intersect at its current level, that's right around 265 million ADA. So we are 150 million ADA net change limit. We do know of a couple of proposals that are not choosing Intersect that are popular, that they would also easily fit within the 350 million net change limit, and we're going nowhere near that number. That number was the number of its spend less than we made last year, which is why it was put out there. It's why it was pretty much settled on. That number did win a resounding vote that it was very well received in the end once everybody had the opportunity to grapple with it, and we had nearly 98% turnout, voter turnout at the end of that. It was a scramble near the end where everybody put their voice in. It was fantastic, and 70 odd percent approval rate. So another good experiment in our decentralized governance. We're moving forward to this next step. We know it's been painful. It's been painful for the folks of us that have been working in Intersect and trying to get it going. It's been painful for the community. Doing resource allocation is hard, and I respect everybody that stayed at it, everybody that's gotten through this process. The DReps have spent their time, they've spent their weekend times voting on this tooling, and attending these workshops and everything. So, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate everybody that's put forth all the time, energy, effort, whether you're a vendor, whether you work at Intersect, whether you work at one of the founding entities, whether you're a community member. Really appreciate everybody's time, energy, and effort that's gone into this. It's been really incredible to see everybody come together to get this done one way or another, and we're getting there. We're putting forward a budget. It's not all the way there yet. The polls are still open until Monday. That's just where we kind of stand right now. That number can go up, it can go down between now and Monday, depending on what people decide. But it's looking like we're showing a pretty good bit of fiscal discipline. It looks like we're not going anywhere near that net change limit. There are some concerns that maybe are we spending enough on certain things? So the ideal situation here is we get this over the line, and then we have an opportunity to do a second round. If we look at what went through in this first round and we feel that we maybe didn't spend enough in marketing, or if we didn't spend enough in governance support, we could potentially do a second round. But we'll give it some time, give it a month, give it some time for everybody to take a little bit of a breather and then come back and maybe take some fresh eyes approach to looking at it. So that's just kind of where we're at today. That's literally, when I tell you updates, that's literally updates from meetings today. So that's as fresh an update as I could possibly give you guys. So I don't think I can get more transparent unless I'm a pane of glass. So there you go. There's my updates. Happy to take any questions from you guys. So please let me know how I can help.
That's great. Thank you for that. I guess just one really. So if Intersect's own proposal, I guess, remains negative, will the administration be paused or reassigned or partially funded, or what are the kind of options from that point?
So that's the conversation we have, right? So who else has stood up? Like is what? So I'm happy as I mean, I'm just one guy at Intersect. I just work on the budget committee as the secretary at this point. I got one job, right? So and it's not even a very exciting one. So what we can do is we can respond and react to requests to make changes. So if it's we want Intersect to do it, but we need these changes, we can respond to that. Absolutely makes sense. And if we can get that information from you, then we're able to from you being the broader DRep community, right? If the broader DRep community comes forward and says, I would vote yes for Intersect if Intersect changes this thing or that thing. Okay, well, we can have that conversation and say that may be something we can do. We can address that. And then hopefully get some yes vote changes that way. The other option is that someone else could stand up and say, well, that's fine. I'll administer the proposals. Since Intersect is not wanted to administer, we'll go this route and we'll administer, and the DReps could approve that approach. So the one thing we can't do is say no and there be no alternative. That's the one thing we can't do. So right now, that's kind of where we're at. Is it's either, and I don't want to get there. It's like that's an uncomfortable position for everybody. So what I'm hoping is that we've got all of the rest of this week and this weekend. If a DRep has feedback, we're here. Like I'm as available as I've ever been. Happy to take anybody's call, anybody's email, X post, whatever, and I know Jack's the same way. Jack's back, and he's getting that. He's now in this, talk about an exciting position. Now he's now in that interim executive director position, so he's really in the hot seat now. I'm sure he will be more than happy to hear from anybody that has feedback as a DRep as to what changes they would need to see to have their vote changed to a yes. So let's have that conversation now. If we don't have the conversation, we can't make the change, whatever that change would be. We can't. But that's the beauty of having the conversation, right? We both come to the table with expectations. We come away from the table hopefully with a changed vote. And that's this process. By the way, that's the same process for any vendor. Any vendor right now that's feeling like, hey, I didn't get a fair shake. Well, reach out to the DReps. That's actually what this looks like, right? It's literally get out there, go to the DReps and say, hey, what can we do to change your mind?
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate that color. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. This isn't going to be easy, but I don't.
Yeah.
By design, I don't think this. Adam Rush said this to me earlier today, and I agree with him. I don't agree with him on everything, but this was something I agreed with him on. It was like this process was not designed to be easy. And he's right. This process is not designed to be easy. It's designed to be decentralized. That means that if a DRep voted no on your proposal, you can go talk to that DRep and say, hey, why did you vote no on this proposal? What can I do better?
So on that point, so can DReps change their votes
Yes,
if you
absolutely.
do have a conversation with them and just perhaps you were slow on getting some answers back to them that they posted and they just didn't like that, and then yeah, okay, fine.
Absolutely. Ecclesia is open for you're not set in stone in Ecclesia until Monday.
Yeah,
Now
fine.
and Monday at midnight UTC. Monday, 3 UTC.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? So you have between now and then to ask any DRep to change their vote. That's true of any proposal, any vendor, or any.
Cool. Good to know. Thank you.
Sure, of course. Been getting a little philosophic in these calls when there aren't big crowds, but this has been an interesting journey. We've had you know we've had some really good points. We've had some really tough points, and I kind of knew getting into the resource allocation part of this that it was going to be the hardest part of this journey. Like I really did, and I think the biggest thing that we're going to deal with in the end of this is when this is done. I hope that a lot of us that were like deep in the weeds in this process go get a beer somewhere, go get go hang out at one of the conferences or something and just really kind of talk it through. I don't think I wonder sometimes if the jobs were appreciated. I think sometimes the jobs felt like they were stepping on other people or making other people uncomfortable or nervous or whatever, and so it just and then being on the punching bag side feels pretty rough sometimes. Like I hope to recall what I like about some of these people that have been friends for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, a beer around a table face to face generally solves like almost all the world's problems, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm hoping, because I'd really like to do that, and I'd like to see what I really want to see is that we've got new tooling now. We've got some new ideas from what we've learned from this round of doing things. There are some things DReps obviously don't mind doing, like this Ecclesia tool. They seem to really not mind using this at all. It's asynchronous. It works pretty well. If we can get some kind of change request, change order built into it, I think we can make this into a much more functional tool, and we can kind of center more of the process around something like this. And it's Hydra, so it's on chain, which is even more helpful. So if we can kind of get that built a little bit more solidly around the process, I think what we'll end up with for next year is less friction in this part of the process. And I think this is probably the hardest and most friction-inducing part of the process is getting your proposal in front of DReps, getting feedback from DReps, and it's getting DReps' attention on this issue, right? Focusing a large chunk of the community on one thing for any one period of time is super hard. I think there's 800 registered DReps. How do you get 800 people to focus on anything for any given period of time, right? You make a deadline. That's how you do it. You make a deadline. So that's we've got some energy and we've got some dedication and some focus time on that. And I think if we do that in 2026, I think this process will go a whole lot smoother then.
good to hear. Yeah, one thing that would be nice, but I assume quite difficult, is notifications of when you have questions asked on a proposal. Because we had some that we missed and we took some days to get back to those people. And then those people voted no. So I don't know if that was just a coincidence. Maybe they're going to vote no anyway, but it would have been nice to answer their questions. But yeah, I guess because the system itself is always going to be decentralized, the notification system is always going to be quite tricky to build in.
That's right. They're tricky to build in because they all have to be opt-in. There's no way to do a guaranteed. Yeah. I've said it's like there's no like you pick up the microphone and speak into it and all the DReps will hear you. That's an impossible thing in our environment,
No,
right?
no, but I was saying for the people that submit the proposal, if they got a notification when questions had been posted.
That's true, and that's when I can definitely say that is a fairly easy lift. If when you submit your proposal, you provide means of contact, right? And that way and then we make that really rich, right? That would actually work out really well. Hey, here's a phone method, here's Telegram, here's email. 9 different ways you can sign up to receive a message if you have a comment. That way you get notified every way you want. That I can see, and I agree completely. For vendors, it would be very useful to have that notification, so you would definitely know when DReps get back to you. So just looking a little further afield to 2026, and we're trying to think through, and I do appreciate what Warren was saying there, that definitely notification options, and I'll take that back for sure, that any tooling that we use needs to have notification options for everybody. If the DRep wants to be notified when a new proposal is entered, we should be able to do that for the DReps. If a vendor gets a comment or a question on their proposal, they should be getting notified right away, instantly, so they can. That's the friction we've got to remove wherever we can, and if we can remove that in an on-chain manner, that's all the better, because now we're using our tools and our technology for what it's really meant for. So, and something like Ecclesia really will lend to that, because it's a Hydra-based tool. The front end could connect to whatever services it needs to, and you can have as many transactions as you need. It doesn't matter. You're not doing it all on chain, and then the results of everything, including like, hey, we sent out this notification at 10 p.m. on Tuesday. It's all stored in that Hydra head, so you would be able to go back and audit any of that information that you wanted to later in the future. Tempo does actually have a little bit of interesting notification stuff built in. So does RYP, Reach Your People. Those two, I've seen some very interesting things that they're both doing with notifications, and I do like both of those tools for that. A big chunk of this, and this is something that I've, that this is our first year through this, and so under-resourced is is an understatement. There just wasn't any tooling to do any of this, and there really wasn't. If you look through the original proposal for the budget, there was something for the tooling to align the budget, but then we were told there was no money to do that for the first year, but that we could use the people that we had available to try and do what we could with people. So we did, and it's just part of the process is that we had some people that we could work with to kind of capture and do it. That's actually can be useful from a software development perspective, because what we did with the people and with spreadsheets, you can then hand over to developers, and developers can then automate, right? So it's actually a really useful exercise, but obviously it doesn't scale. You need to move from that fairly quickly into tooling, and now we think going into 2026 that we could really take some time to start maturing some of this tooling, and really take some time to start maturing a communication network, start maturing a CIP. So, how do maybe we make proposals go on chain, So yes, as far as whether they capture all DRep IDs, yes, all DRep IDs are captured, because you only can have a DRep ID if you go on chain. So because of that, that means that yes, as soon as you go on chain, your DRep ID is there. So when we registered the DRep ID for us, the DRep ID was registered on chain. So everybody that can look at the Cardano blockchain can see that we have a DRep ID and that it's associated with it. And the Ecclesia tool has all the DReps. The Gov tool has all the DReps. That's all, and so does Tempo. And they all have all the DReps because the DReps are all on chain. So that's the beauty of doing it. The more we can do on chain, the better we can kind of accommodate everybody. If a tool like Ecclesia can go from being a single node Hydra to anybody could run a Hydra node and participate in Ecclesia, now we've really got something, right? And so we could have a SIP on, here's how you create your own budget proposal, and you would just create the budget proposal metadata and put it out in the tool, and then everyone would immediately know all of the tools. And then if you updated one, you could update it, and the blockchain would keep track of all that in the Hydra head. And if we did that, and at the end of this reconciliation session, we collapsed it down to a single info action, now that's something that's incredibly useful. And that was kind of like the vision, but you don't get to that vision in the first step when we don't even like Hydra's come a long way, but it's not so bulletproof perfect now that that we have tooling that we could launch all that right now today. We still have things we have to build to get to that point. So let's build that this year and let's work toward that goal together. That's where I stand. That's where I'm at with this. And so that's what's doable here. That's where we can go if we take these bones, these foundational elements, and add on to them. So again, that's the nice thing about them. When they go on chain, that's why we have Reach Your People, we have Tempo, we have those kinds of tools. With those tools, as soon as something goes on chain, you get notified immediately. So as a DRep, I actually, like, everything goes off. My Discord goes off, my Telegram goes off, I get an email, I get all these different things as soon as an info action, or any governance action for that matter, posts. And that's because when it goes on chain, that happens. But this is where I was talking earlier about it's actually very expensive to create a governance action. So the tool like Ecclesia, what's making it very useful is that it doesn't require that big 100,000 ADA deposit to get started. We can launch the tool. We could have the Hydra head open. It would be really neat if we could kind of launch it like a governance action, but then we go through and do all of the work in the Hydra head, and then when we're done and we close out the head, it closes into the actual info action or whatever action that we need. Like, that would be kind of dream come true stuff where we open up, even though it's an off-chain process, the off-chain process has sort of an on-chain denominator that says, hey, we're moving toward finishing this task. Here's our deposit that we're going to use, and that signals everybody. It signals the DReps, it signals the whole community, and then we go into the Hydra head, the group of Hydra heads. Everybody can monitor it, just like we're doing with this now. We can all watch what's happening. We can all see the DReps. They can, proposals can come in. They can be voted on, voted up, voted down. The sausage is made in the Hydra head, right? And then once and I would say we vote to close it, right? That would be the really cool way to do it. That way you can be open as long as you need to be. Right now, Intersect is saying, hey, we've got a deadline. We need to do this by this date. What if instead we say we're going to open it and we agree to close it when we reach this consensus, or we agree to close it by this date if we don't reach this consensus, right? So it's almost like it fails by the date of this, but if we reach a consensus by any day prior to that, we can close it prior to that. That kind of thing. So that's kind of like, this is future government for Cardano that we can build if we're allowed to keep going, if we're allowed to continue the work of governance. And that's my biggest concern right now, is that there's almost no funding for government support at all right now by the DReps at all. There's 200,000 ADA out of all of the proposals that are currently funded. That's it. And that's to me, that's mind-blowing. We aren't anywhere near done building even our minimum government. We really aren't. What we've got now is the ability to kind of start to make decisions, but we haven't built any tooling. We haven't built any communication networks. We don't have any way for DReps to get together. So without those things, it's kind of chaos. And we could work together and formulate, just something that let the DReps set the tone and the tenor. Because I think right now the reason that they don't is they don't really know how they can. They're not really empowered to be our decision makers yet, because there's not enough infrastructure around them to let them do that. work. But we can get there. I really do think we can get there. All right, guys. Well, actually, that certainly made that 30-minute window blow by. Did that raise any other questions or concerns while we were going through that? Because if it did, I'm happy to answer them.
No, that was great. Thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. My pleasure. All right. Well, on that note, thank you guys all for your time and attendance today. Your attention is your most precious resource, and when you spend it with me, when you spend it with Cardano, you are making Cardano a better place. So thank you for your time today, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. All the best. Cheers.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.